July 26th, 2025. It's a warm Saturday afternoon at Denver International Airport. Families are checking in, pilots are filing flight plans, and children press their faces to the windows, watching planes glide across the tarmac. Among the busy terminals and blinking departure boards, there's nothing out of the ordinary, until there is. At gate C-48, passengers begin boarding American Airlines Flight 3023, a Boeing 737 MAX 8 bound for Miami. The crew greets each traveler with smiles. Bags are loaded, announcements made, seatbelts clicked. It's also normal, until the unexpected begins, quietly at first. A faint vibration beneath the rear wheels. A flicker of resistance. And then nothing. Just routine. At 2:44 p.m., the aircraft is cleared for takeoff. The jet begins taxiing down the runway, engines humming with purpose. But as the wheels lift off the tarmac and the plane gains speed, a thunderous boom echoes from beneath the fuselage. The plane shudders. Within seconds, passengers on the left side see flames erupting from under the wing. The smell of burning rubber fills the cabin. The flight crew immediately aborts takeoff. Oxygen masks dangle. A thick plume of smoke swirls outside the windows. In an instant, chaos breaks out. Passengers scream. A mother holds her baby tighter. A man yells for someone to open the door, but they're still on the ground. No one's flying anywhere now. The flight attendants spring into action, their voices cutting through the panic. Leave your bags. Move. Go. Emergency slides deploy with explosive force, slamming onto the hot runway. The cabin becomes a flood of bodies, pushing, scrambling, falling. Outside, flames lick at the wheels. Someone begins filming. The video would later go viral. Passengers sliding down the chutes, some limping away, others dragging children, some collapsing in tears. The air is filled with choking smoke. A piece of the landing gear breaks loose and rolls across the tarmac. Inside, an elderly passenger is unable to get up. A man tries to carry her. At 2:51 p.m., Denver Fire and Rescue arrive. Within minutes, the flames are extinguished. 179 people were on board. 6 are injured. 1 is rushed to the hospital. The rest, shaken, bruised, but alive, are herded back to the terminal. But what caused the fire? At first, the story seemed simple. Officials said the plane had a landing gear issue. Maybe a tire blew. Maybe the brakes overheated. American Airlines issued a brief statement. There was a mechanical malfunction during takeoff. Safety protocols were followed. All passengers were evacuated safely. But not everyone was satisfied. Some passengers described seeing smoke long before the boom. Others said they heard a strange whine under the floor an hour before boarding. And then there were the mechanics. One anonymous engineer claimed they had flagged the aircraft just 2 weeks earlier for unusual brake pressure readings. According to a leaked maintenance report, Flight 3023 had 2 brake actuator inconsistencies on July 14th and July 21st, but the plane was clear to fly anyway. The FAA, now under pressure, launches a full investigation. Meanwhile, footage from multiple passengers emerges. In one clip, a sharp pop is heard before the fire starts, an unusual sound for a blown tire. Another shows sparks flying beneath the left rear wheel, even as the plane is still taxiing. But perhaps most disturbing is what isn't seen. One passenger swore they saw a flash under the wing before the plane began its takeoff roll. It didn't look like fire, it looked like a small explosion. Conspiracy forums light up. Was it sabotage? A technical fault covered up by the airline? Or something else? A few days after the incident, a whistleblower comes forward. A former American Airlines engineer who worked on several Boeing 737 MAX aircraft claims internal emails warned of faulty heat shielding on certain brake lines. He says engineers were pressured not to delay flights, even when warning signs appeared. He also mentions a disturbing pattern. This wasn't the first time a fire had occurred at Denver on a 737 MAX. Digging deeper, journalists uncover a similar event in March 2025. Another American Airlines 737 had an engine fire at the same airport. That one also evacuated safely, but it was buried in a pile of press releases and never investigated thoroughly. Coincidence? Or a part of a bigger pattern? More questions arise. Why was Flight 3023 still in service after repeated maintenance flags? Why did the airline not inform passengers about these earlier warnings? And perhaps most chillingly, what if the fire had started just 60 seconds later, after the plane had taken off? The FAA remains tight-lipped. Investigators claim it's still too early to determine the root cause, though preliminary reports suggest a localized heat event caused by abnormal friction. But passengers aren't buying it. Mark Serkis, one of the survivors, tells a local news station, "There was a bang, a flash, and then I saw fire coming out of the wheel. I've flown dozens of times. This was no normal mechanical failure. This was different." His voice shakes as he continues. "If we'd been in the air, we'd be dead." The airline, facing mounting pressure, offers refunds and vouchers. But some passengers refuse. They want answers, not coupons. And they're not alone. A class action lawsuit begins to form, led by 5 passengers who claim emotional trauma and endangerment. One of them, a woman named Shay Armistead, was separated from her 2 children during the evacuation. "They were 2 rows behind me," she says. "In the smoke, I couldn't find them. I thought they died." Weeks go by. Investigators comb through the plane's black box, cockpit voice recordings, maintenance logs, and onboard systems. They find something strange. The brake temperature sensor, which should have triggered a warning before takeoff, recorded no anomaly. But the camera footage clearly shows the fire began under the brakes. How could both things be true? Then a retired NTSB safety consultant weighs in. His theory: the sensor was faulty or had been bypassed. He recalls a case from 2019 when a similar MAX 8 aircraft caught fire due to substandard brake line welds. That incident was supposed to be isolated. But what if it wasn't? The twist deepens when a journalist obtains a document from an internal audit at Boeing. It shows that during a 6-month stretch in 2024, over 50 planes were flagged for brake system irregularities. Of those, 12 were linked to a specific part manufactured by a subcontractor in Tulsa. Guess which aircraft was part of that batch? Flight 3023. Suddenly, a narrative begins to emerge. Not one of sabotage or a one-off accident, but of systemic failure. Corners cut, warnings ignored, and a near tragedy that should have been prevented. But the story doesn't end there. In late August, an FAA inspector uncovers emails between American Airlines executives and maintenance heads. In one, a manager writes, "We can't afford another delay on 3023. Approve and fly. Minimize downtime." The response? Copy that. Logging minimal risk. Push it through. The fallout is swift. Investigations intensify. Senate hearings are scheduled. The public demands accountability. Passengers, once silent, become the faces of a growing scandal. The footage of flames at Denver airport plays on national news. Lawsuits pile up, and behind closed doors, airline CEOs scramble to contain the damage. Then, just when it seems everything's out in the open, one more twist hits. A second whistleblower emerges, but this time from inside the FAA. She claims her team filed a safety advisory 2 months before the July 26th fire, warning about potential thermal anomalies in certain brake systems on 737 MAX aircraft operating at high-altitude airports like Denver. The advisory was never published. Why? According to her, it was intentionally held back due to fears it would cause operational disruptions and investor panic. The document is leaked. It confirms everything. So now we ask again, what really happened on Flight 3023? Was it a random accident? A routine failure? Or was it the burning tip of a much deeper, much darker iceberg? A system so driven by efficiency and optics, it buried warnings, ignored signs, risked lives. This wasn't just a plane fire. It was a fire alarm for an entire industry. And though 179 people survived that day, the real question is, how many close calls have been buried in silence? How many more warnings ignored? And the next time a bang echoes under a plane's wing, will anyone still be there to ask why?
You're right. Leave room for the fire truck. Watch out for the fire truck. Everybody, fire.